It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pure Performance. We have an exciting one today. I think I always say they're always exciting. This one is particularly exciting, though, I think. But Andy, hello, Andy. Before I begin, I have to mention that yesterday I was mixing our Pat Meenan episodes. And if you recall, that was episode 13. Actually, it's 13 and 14. But I want to, Andy, just say hi so I know that you made it through the unlucky 13.
Oh, that's right, because we knew somebody's going to die, but it
Right.
seems he survived. We don't know if Pat actually survived.
I haven't seen any news about him expiring, though, so I think we all made it through, fortunately.
Right.
So, how have you been, Andy?
Not too bad. I just came back from a trip to Latin America, to Chile and Peru. And the reason why I want to mention it, not because people think I'm just salsa dancing all the time when I travel. I did in Chile, which was fantastic, but what was more interesting, which actually segues over to the discussion we have today, I was in the lucky situation to meet a couple of companies down there and their innovation teams, and actually companies, mainly banks and telcos, that are also doing stuff and trying to do stuff, what we hear today from Bernd, our CTO and founder of Dynatrace, because these guys also realized that they have to change the way they develop and deploy software. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And so, yeah, that's what I did the last couple of weeks, or last week. And, well, Brian, let's go right ahead and introduce our guest today.
All right,
okay?
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
All right, with me in the room today in our Boston office is Bernd Greifeneder, or Bernd, right? To use the proper German pronunciation. Thanks, Bernd, for joining us today.
Sure, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, and so Bernd, we invited you to the show because it was, I think, in June or July when we were both presenting at a Perform Day in Europe, and we were basically talking about digital transformation, DevOps, continuous delivery. And you had a very interesting talk because you basically said how Dynatrace as a software company evolved over the last couple of years, the way we develop software. And it just was very intriguing to me to then get you, and I wanted to get you on the show because I think you, from a C-level perspective, you can tell the audience out there kind of which transition we went through in the last couple of years, why we actually made the changes that we did, what the changes were. And so that's why we wanted to invite you, because I think your session was called back then DevOps in Action, how we achieved rapid Ruxit innovation with high quality. And I know you also have a session at one of the DevOps events in Linz, our hometown, in a couple of weeks on the topic from zero to DevOps in 80 days.
Mm-hmm, right.
So Bernd, without further ado, if you want to introduce yourself more to the audience, maybe that's a good start, but then just, I guess people know who we are. Maybe not. No.
Yeah, so basically we have always been developing software for application performance management, and sort of, as Andy just asked for the intro, the whole story started out in 2005 when I founded Dynatrace back then. And back then, everything was about building software that runs on premises with normal development cycles. So as Dynatrace grew and became more and more successful, obviously we advanced our development processes as well, and we did even agile before we knew it was agile software development, but then we had sort of also the formal description with Scrum and these kind of things as well to do it, and then we improved it of course, further. So, but then when we grew further and became part of a bigger organization, and two other products sort of joined the family, I was put into a situation also to actually bring three products together, and I figured that, okay, integrating is more duct taping for a customer. Integration is providing some value, but it's never providing you a slick super seamless product. And at this point in time, this was in 2012, sort of already 7 years after founding the company, Dynatrace. It was really also time to reassess what are the key market trends, and then this was also then the moment where we said, okay, when you can't integrate 3 products in the APM domain space to make it super easy, you need to do it greenfield. But if you do it greenfield, you better sure it has all the new forward-looking trends already anticipated back then. And this is also actually what we started in internally, and we also knew if we do this greenfield, it needs to be also SaaS as well as on-premises, sort of, because all the previous products were on-premises. So, and this also then was for us then the trigger point. Okay, we do a new product alongside our existing products, and we also, with anticipating the future and with the SaaS model, have to figure out kind of what is then our proper release cycle. Yes, it's still SaaS and on-premises, so you could argue, why change? Let's do it the same as we always did, meaning 2 major releases a year plus one or the other intermediate kind of update release. That's sort of all what's in there, so why not continue it? And sort of the story for us then started actually also with the point that it took always for us such a long time to get customer feedback with the on-premises product. So if you released, then it took 3 months of the adoption of the first 30% of your customer base, which was actually pretty fast in our market, but still, this was the initial adoption. And then it continued, the customers started to using it, and sort of you got the first deeper feedback beyond, of course, your early access programs that you did do after 6 months that you have released. And at that time, you're already down the road of your next release. So everything is so delayed in terms of feedback. And since I'm personally a very strong believer that you can only build great software if you're close to your customers and understand their domain, their problems, and only then we can build the best products. The feedback factor is key to me. And this drove us then further to also think about, okay, how can we increase the release cycles then with our new greenfield project? And having also SaaS in mind there, it provided the additional opportunity for us to get feedback not only by verbal means from customers or through the classic channels of support and whatever you have, but also through the value of SaaS that you're connected with your customers' usage and you have sort of the usage patterns. So that's, of course, the additional benefit. And then I went back sort of to my team and said, okay, with modern architecture, it needs to be web scale, it needs to be SaaS, it needs to scale to 100,000s of hosts for monitoring purposes. We also said we want to have the feedback rapidly. I mean, where we have feedback rapidly is through a SaaS offering. And this means that also we need to be able then to also provide fixes or simply improvements. I mean, even if it's just paper cuts, also super quickly. And that coupled with another factor, actually, up to that new greenfield project, we never had to host our product ourselves because always the customers hosted our APM offering. And that made a big difference then also because, now we have to host it ourselves, and sort of we were then focused also or forced to think about, should we build then a 24/7 NOC team ourselves? And as developers, we hated to think about that. I mean, no one wants to stay up sort of in shifts 24/7 and so forth. But still, when you build a SaaS service for monitoring purposes, it has to be super reliable and high available. So, and this forced then also the process of how do we do then the operations for this. And we had some experience with a classic NOC that does use 3 global locations in a sort of follow the sun operations model. It consumed 16 people just to keep it operationally running. And then we also sort of figured, okay, when we want to use this team, then we have to also follow their procedures. And so we did some test runs. We used our existing product, put it into Amazon Cloud, and had it then being operated by that existing NOC team of 16 people. And then we had once the situation that we found a bug in our software, wanted to patch this, and then we ran through the normal procedure. And the normal procedure said, okay, there's every Thursday a NOC team change request meeting. And there we could submit our request, and then they handled it till the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, you could then discuss when then the date of deployment is of the fix, then 1 or 2 weeks later. And so to us, having done development in an agile fashion and having already had a very strong continuous integration in place, it did not at all make any sense to why does it then take 3 weeks to deploy a patch into production for kind of even a SaaS deployment. So this didn't compute for us. And this is why we said, no, we do not want to build such kind of a NOC team for our new offerings. It needs to be much more agile. It can't have procedures that takes that long to do something good to customers. And this forced us then also into the thinking, okay, so we need to be able, as a team, from code to production, including all key smoke tests and regression tests, to be executed in a time of 1 hour.
Wow.
And this was sort of the goal that I gave the team. Of course, everyone was kind of waving the "you're an idiot" sign kind of to me, or kind of "this is totally out of whack" request. But I put it as a stake into the ground because I believed in it. We need to have a goal that really drives us forward and forces us to think differently. So the team went off. I mean, we had lots of discussions. How can we ever build software that is strategic and has major architectural changes and so forth, and we need to refactor something, but then do this in a sprint cycle? How can you actually couple that? And we believe that this is impossible. But I'm glad that I do have a team that sort of had no idea how we can solve this, but they still stuck with me in the goal and just did their best to kind of work towards this. So we basically extended then our continuous integration step by step towards the deployment pipeline. Mm-hmm. Sort of step by step, we advance continuous integration into continuous delivery. Mm-hmm. But then I also, as I at the beginning mentioned, that the feedback is always the key piece, sort of not just from customers, but also in your deployment phases to the engineers, how the steps are doing. We had advanced this to continuous deployment and feedback. So at every step, the engineers get immediately feedback when something fails, whether it's the build failing or it's the continuous integration tests failing or the smoke tests failing, and all of this had to be automated. And this was in the initial phase to actually get to sprint-based releases, a key pain point. Maybe I should also mention in this process, we also set our goal. We want to have a major release with every sprint. So in contrast to 2 major releases a year, what we were used to in the past. So in order to have a major release every sprint, we also had the mantra, or put the mantra in place to get there. We need to have also every day a sort of production-ready build together that we can internally use. Of course, we didn't want to release every day to customers, but the whole point is the build quality must be as good as production-ready on a daily basis. And this was the biggest hurdle. So it took us at least 3 months where we totally struggled to get a build working within a sprint cycle at all. Every day it failed, and every day it failed at a different area. Sometimes it was the automation, sometimes it was just engineers checking in on Friday afternoon and breaking it for everyone else. Sometimes it's just a complexity problem, so we had to re-architect the way we are compiling builds. So many different factors, human, technology factors, automation factors, process factors, all played together. But the beauty was then after the first 3 months where we really had big doubts whether we reached the goal of major release every sprint, plus the other goal of having a build deployed within an hour from dev to production, whether we could reach this at all. So we were really pretty much down to that, but we kept hanging on to that, and sort of also there were moments where it was clear you had to have a top management buy-in for that goal, because many things had to move and fall in place. So there were investments that had to be done sort of in order to throw out technology and buy other software tooling, investments in changing team setups in order to get there, investments in cross-lab development, sort of many things had to be adjusted top-down in order to make it happen, to get to a daily build that actually is production ready firsthand in order to get then to our sprint-based release. And it actually then, after this original pain period, worked it out for us. We had all the moving parts in place then, and we were there then at our first release that we could do in a sprint, and all the subsequent 10, 20 sprints, we of course also didn't have a successful build every day. Even today, not every day the build is sort of fully successful, but today we are at the stage where we can say maybe one build fails over the course of a sprint, but it's not many days. So we have caught up to high quality for the team, but it's really touching everyone in the engineering team. And you need to think about that also. Even at the beginning, it was already 100 engineers checking in. Today, it's over 200 checking in into that code base. So this is not just a matter of one Scrum team to get coordinated. This is a large group of folks checking in. And that was the key challenge. So at that time, when we then were able to release a sprint by sprint to production, we still weren't there to get from code to production within 1 hour. It was a multi-hour piece. So we still had to do further work in speeding up our continuous delivery pipeline. But this is also where one needs to recognize that sort of the entire test automation team and build automation team who has also built the continuous integrations out of beforehand actually is not sort of a team that is not touching code. Actually, you should see them as a team of dedicated engineering teams, dedicated Scrum teams, whose purpose is to build product too. Mm-hmm. But their product that they're building is actually the continuous delivery product that facilitates all the automation mechanisms end to end. And this is also kind of one of the lessons, many lessons learned is that first you need to build such a dedicated team, and you need to have also smart engineering skills there. You can't have test and scheduling people kind of there who just use software. No, you need engineers in those teams. And then the second part of lesson learned there is that those teams who build this continuous delivery
pipeline, maybe continuous delivery framework, continuous delivery product,
thingy.
The thingy, the magic, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you build this team who are the experts in engineering of that, but also in the continuous delivery, it is the key that it's one and the same team. So, and this is now the point actually I wanted to make, sort of in many organizations, you typically have then the handover to the ops team. Mm-hmm. But it was intentional and also essential that there is a continuum in the technology stack from continuous integration into the continuous delivery into production. Sort of, if there was a test automation and test deployment stack that's different in continuous integration, and then the ops team, for instance, would have gone off and used Puppet or Chef or whatever in production and have total different deployment techniques, then we would have a break in the continuous deployment, and this would not be seamless. And with such a stack break, we could never have tuned it, the continuous delivery cycle, tuned it to the reliability we're in as well as the speed. It's those two factors, because now in our continuous delivery pipeline, the technology stack also for deploying and testing is the same in the engineering pipeline stage, in the first continuous integration stage, and then also in the staging stages where then everything is tested prior to production. And then of course in production we also run certain tests. So everything is the same, and that is very key. The lesson learned. Mm-hmm. This was also mandatory to then tune it down to actually achieve our goal a couple of months later than of really 1 hour from code to deployment. And also, to be fair, of course, there are tests like we run for a full sprint, heavy load tests all the time continuously. So of course you can squeeze those long-term tests into 1 hour. Mm-hmm. But the point is, if there is a fix to be done, all the key smoke tests that are important still run through in the 1 hour, and this allows us to provide patches and fixes truly within that 1 hour cycle. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that we achieved that goal, and it was a true team effort to get there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. This was, I think Brian and I, we both let you talk, because I think the story on itself is amazing, the way you actually walked us through the process. So, Brian, did you have a question? Because I have a couple.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of comments. Well, I had some questions, but he kind of, Bernd addressed them sort of in there, but I wanted to just highlight them a little bit. I started using Dynatrace as a customer in the 3.x days, and then joined in the 4.x days, actually just after 4.0 was released. And one of the things that really attracted me to it was all of the talk of speeding up your cycles. This was back in 2010, 2011. Agile was starting to slowly replace waterfall, but at my organization, we were hardcore waterfall. So there was that big attraction, especially of what the Dynatrace people were telling us about, hey, you can start speeding up the cycle through this. So, for me, hearing the story of one of the corporate speak words that I hate is, eat your own dog food. Being kind of more of a geek, I like Who Watches the Watchmen better. But, this is just a classic story of a company using its own, improving on its process in the same way that we try to encourage other companies to go through that same transformation. So I really just, loved hearing that story about that. But, the one question I was going to ask was, how does, when you have a team, right, and you're telling them you're going to go to a release every hour, or not a release, but code deployment every hour that you were talking about before, and you get a lot of those sideways looks and mumblings when you leave the room. I think one of the other challenges, and that was the question I was going to ask you, is how do you get the team to actually adopt that and stop resisting and take it on? And what you pointed out was very important. This comes from the top down. I think any developer or operational or any team member worth their salt these days wants to do these things, right? And I see them all the time when we go on engagements where we're dealing with the developers or the testers, where they're very excited about these new processes. And I guess we can't call them new anymore, but the newer type processes. But if they don't have that support from the top saying, we're going to do this and we're going to give you what you need and we're going to make it happen, they're going to be disappointed. And that's, the answer you kind of pushed out there was, yes, this was coming from you, it was coming down from the top. It was fully supported. And that's the key to making the success. The one other thing I just wanted to bring up from what you said towards the end there, which was, I think is critical, and it's amazing how easy it is to do in the modern day and age, is that same deployment process throughout the life cycle. Again, from my old days, there was always the dev environment maintained by the dev team, the test environment maintained by the test team, and the operations environment maintained by the operations team. And testing and other deployments would go on in these environments, and they would pass in one environment only to go to the next and fail because something as simple as maybe a configuration difference in between the environments. So that's, there's all sorts of processes, that you were talking about that are very important to making this happen. But I think from an execution phase, if you don't have that seamless, integrated, same deployment style throughout the life cycle, you're bound to just have, a million issues. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's very key. You can't have situations where things are different in different environments and no one's using the same thing. So the unification of that release cycle is important.
Right, and also to add to that a little bit into the part of the story, we made some experiences with a more classic NOC team, and this was also then the moment to decide, okay, we do not want to have such a NOC team. And having driven all that from the engineering side, we said, okay, actually, we do not want to have such a NOC team if it's not needed. And since we had no experience at all, we had in the early phase of operating the SaaS offering, we still had the NOC team involved. And we had then to write runbooks. And this was another piece the engineers hate to create, runbook entries. So we wrote them, and when we looked then at those, then somehow they look to us almost like just a different programming language, but more or less it's a programmatic code, like a script, exactly. So we went then out there and said, okay, let's have the fun, and with every sprint, eliminate at least one, if not more, of those runbooks by actually automating our orchestration, because maybe this is one thing also to add, in order to operate and also the production deployments of the new APM offering. We had put an orchestration in place because we operate the clusters in the Amazon cloud, and in order to orchestrate them, we build our own orchestration engine. So the point was to automate those runbooks and put then the automation into that orchestration layer. And interestingly, it took us just 5 or 7 sprint cycles where we came down to one single runbook entry. And that runbook entry said, if the orchestration layer cannot heal our production system fully automatically, then call R&D. That's it. Basically, it meant that we reached a point where it was obsolete to have a NOC team, and all was it, now let's automate the last step, automate calling, then R&D. And this is actually how we arrived, triggered actually by the pain of slow classic NOC processes, to move to not just to DevOps, but actually to almost sort of bypass DevOps, but arrive at NoOps. Because truly, now we operate with a team with a true NoOps fashion, so there is no NOC at all needed for operating that. And I'm speaking out of a small deployment. We have 400 instances in Amazon around the globe, fully high availability, failover, multiple zones, and we have survived perfectly, total seamless to customers. Many issues that Amazon had when they had issues and downtimes and so forth, all works seamlessly well. And now take that, the team, the NoOps team, is actually a team of 3 people. And then the next piece is actually, if you now think, oh, this is just a team of 3 operations people, then this is the then you can ditch this idea or this picture in your mind, because actually this team, you should think of a product management team, the NoOps team. They're product managers to continuously drive and improve the orchestration technology and the orchestration product, if you will, that operates that. And that's what their job is. Yes, those 3 people are also hooked up on Optiony, that is also similar to PagerDuty, sort of to be on standby. But kind of they are barely triggered by our systems that they need to do any manual intervention. And the point is, they feel the pain on their own. If the automation doesn't work properly, then they would get more calls at night or so. But so what they do is instead they make sure that the automation and the self-healing works beautifully. So, and I think this is the right piece there also, and the lesson learned to arrive at NoOps. Put the pain of high availability and good user experience back to the engineering teams, back to the product managers, and back to the chief software architects. If the right people feel the pain of a production issue, then those people will actually fix it because they're able to fix it. This is also another kind of key item. The chief software architects now are responsible for production. And that's new. It's not the ops team. But also it doesn't mean that they run a 24/7 cycle. No, it just means that every day in the morning they check in what are the APM results, what are the log results, what are other key metrics of a system. So to be proactive and also tweak the current sprint if they have found issues that should be proactively fixed, or some things also may happen reactively. But however, all the non-functional requirements actually reside within the chief software architects for production. So, and the product managers, of course, for the functional ones. And this is also key about feedback, bringing it to the team and bringing it to those who actually can fix this. So I think this was also a key item, get to know ops, and part of the speed delivery, so we can focus actually on building software and not operating it.
Cool. So I want to now ask or kind of reiterate one thing which I saw a lot with other companies that I talked with. So I mentioned last week I was visiting several banks that are going through what they call a digital transformation. I would assume we kind of also went through a digital transformation because we needed to build, let's say that way, we needed to escape the innovation dilemma. As you said, we had Dynatrace for 7 years, AppMon, the product we installed on premise. We knew the market is changing. We knew we cannot just duct tape things together to make it work for the next 5, 10, 15 years, but we had to innovate and build something new. And I think the key thing you said in the very beginning, one very big thing was the feedback loop, how long it takes to deploy a feature and understand whether customers like it or not and whether we built the right thing. And if that takes 6 months, because that's the release cycle, that's obviously not good enough. And that's why we actually, this was the big pain, right? Because basically the future of Dynatrace was at stake. Because I'm sure we can, as they say, we can still sell AppMon for years to come, but the next generation of software needs to be monitored in a different way, because it's also a different type of software, right?
Right. It's also, so there's an additional factor to that drove the need for speed and the feedback, and that is we started out with the goal that our new generation APM offering needs to be as disruptive as the iPhone back then was to the mobile phone and PDA market. We set out the goal, we need to have the ease of use and also the beautiness and user experience that is totally new for this entire domain that no one did before. Everything was about features before. And now we said, no, the mantra is people need to just love working with it. It needs to be easy, beauty, fast, slick, and self-explaining, and just work. Mm-hmm. So that goal was sort of also a culture change for us. But that goal also implies that you need feedback super quickly in order to steer then the ease of use and is it self-explaining. And this is why also today we also look at usage patterns every sprint, and what we measure in production influences right away the ongoing sprint as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about bugs or whatever. No, it's actually about the usage, adoption of capabilities and so forth, so that we drive there. And we have adjusted many things. If we just think about our free trial process, I mean, this was tons of lessons learned. We looked at conversion rates and how did we set up just the steps of signing up and getting then users deploy the agent into production, and how easy was that. So we tuned a lot just by observing the users and their patterns there in the conversion rates.
Looking at the right metrics.
Correct.
Metrics to achieve the goals.
And that's key. And this is where today I say I could not ever think anymore about being slower. Yeah. Because we are relying on that feedback and having that timely. In fact, actually, if we could even accelerate it further, it would be good. But there is also then some limitation also to drag customers along as well. Because I should also mention that, yes, it's obvious for a SaaS solution to release every sprint. And of course, we actually do 170 deployments per day. So it's just sort of feature-wise for customers. They notice that this is rolled out then on a sprint-by-sprint basis. But the point I wanted to make is that, yes, for a SaaS solution, it's more obvious to have that speed. We all know the Facebook and Etsy stories and so forth. But what's new is that we took the same mantra also to an on-premises solution as well. So this is why today you can buy Dynatrace SaaS and Dynatrace Managed on premises. It's actually the same APM solution. Just the difference is that the Dynatrace managed on-premises solution keeps all the data on premises, and what's super important for many financial healthcare companies and all kind of who have sort of regulatory requirements. But with the beauty that still this managed cluster is operated like a SaaS offering. So we have a very transparent channel to that on-premises cluster, so we can update remotely and see the health remotely. And customers can also opt in to provide us some additional feedback patterns. But sort of we also release then they're in the same pace as our SaaS solution, and the customers get the same immediate value also on premises, and that's the beauty. And this is sort of also one of the other pieces that I never wanted to lose. I never wanted to be any slower with feedback and with providing value and solutions to customers any more than with the SaaS offering. So we carried it over also to the on-premises offering. That's new to the market, but it's actually super well accepted and adopted. Originally had some concerns about sort of that we maintain a channel there, but truly over 90% of all the financial institutions immediately say, okay, yeah, we need to check this, but here's your transparent description, and then they're fine. There's just a small portion for whom it's trickier, but for those who have also solutions, so it's not an issue. But that was key, taking that same speed to on-premises as well and getting the feedback.
And I think what we also benefited from is that let's say the products that we've been developing for 10 years, AppMon, if you look at Dynatrace AppMon and UEM, these were the products years ago that we deployed twice a year. And we learned a lot from what we did with the new approach and applied these rapid deployment models, the feedback loops, into, let's say, the more traditional product as well. Because we have feedback channels in AppMon and UEM, so we can learn which features are used by users out there. We have a much more rapid deployment model, right? We deploy monthly now, and even we can deploy much faster if we need to address some issues. So I think it was an amazing benefit of having this new approach and then kind of feeding back how we can also change the development of our traditional products. It's fascinating.
That's correct. So you can learn from this way. For instance, if you look at building microservices or so and have a new project, the easiest, of course, is to start there for continuous delivery and super quick releases. And then when you have established a culture there and know what it means, because it means breaking the silos that you have in typically enterprise environments, and then use this sort of as a small learning pattern or kind of prototype, and then you can take some lessons learned back also to your more classic teams and up-level that. But I believe for enterprises, speeding up, the number one challenge is not technology. The number one challenge is their work structure of the classic silos, that there is test and there is dev and there is ops, and it just doesn't work anymore this way. You need to have a totally integrated set of teams across dev, test, ops, and business actually too.
Yeah, I think we will actually have Anita Ingreda on the podcast in probably 2 weeks after this one airs, and she will give us a little more insight into actually the different team structures, what a team is doing, what they're responsible for end to end. I think that's going to be very interesting. Now, Brian, I know we tried to keep this podcast actually shorter than the other ones because we got feedback from our listeners, but it's just so interesting and hard to stop.
Right.
I would, however, try to come to a conclusion soon. And I actually have one last question to Bernd, which could be kind of the conclusion from my side, but I also want to give you the chance if you have anything else that you think the audience needs to know about.
No, I'm good. I got my questions or statements in, and I think anything that I was going to ask Bernd, he brought up on his own. So well done there.
Yeah. So my kind of final question, and maybe as a closing statement, you as a CTO, what recommendation, what guidance can you give other C-level people out there that feel the pain that their organization is not moving fast enough, but they're fearing that they're seeing resistance? What did you do to convince not only yourself, obviously, because you were the main driver behind this, but what did you do to convince all the C-level management to actually push through the plan of taking aside a team of developers and building the future of the company? I'm sure it was not easy, but maybe some guidance, some help, some recommendations to other people out there that need to go and lead their company to a transformation like this.
You're creating a new product. Greenfield is obviously a huge decision because there's lots of cost involved, and it also always takes time to get there. But I also have to say that here in our case, I benefited also from having a great CEO as well, who understood that strategy is as important as tactics, and who understands also that it takes a while when you start greenfield to build something new, but also we have identified key market trends that were clear that needed also a new architecture of our product and a different approach. And I think this learning about what's really the challenge of tomorrow, that was the key ingredient to convince then also the CEO of, hey, we need to start greenfield. Plus also I did a little bit of a trick. I mean, it does not apply directly to our products, but I still sort of frightened the management team. Hey, think about the Kodak story there, how Kodak did. They had already 30% market share in the digital camera market and still totally messed it up. And this anti-pattern helped me also a lot, sort of to, no, we are not Kodak, kind of, this is not us, and so forth. Of course, we are not Kodak per se. It's not such a drastic generation change, but still with a new cloud and microservices and software-defined networks and all that, different approaches, they change is still drastic enough that you really need the new approach to APM, plus also that people have no time anymore these days. They need to have the whole topic of APM to be automatic and intelligent, and this is sort of what drove that.
Yeah, and I think also APM, I mean, it's application performance management, but I think what it's more is actually more about it's about continuous innovation and continuous operation by giving you insight into what your users are doing and how your app behaves, so how your apps behave. It's not only about performance anymore. It's about user behavior. It's about how users use your applications to make you successful as a company, right? So maybe we actually need to redefine APM. I think we tried DPM as digital performance management because that's more what it is, right?
Exactly. This is much more about digital performance management. I mean, we see it ourselves. Yes, performance is no doubt crucial, but as I mentioned before, in the feedback cycle for every sprint, you also need to understand how users are using your product. Exactly. Sort of the functional use aspect and the user experience aspect is at least as important as performance, and this is also why we have done lots of focus to monitor that too. And APM is an old handle, so you're right, Andy.
Cool. Hey, Bernd, thank you so much. This was phenomenal. Brian, do you know when this will air?
Not specifically, but we have today episode 12 aired. In 2 weeks we have the combined 13 and 14. Let me just pull up my calendar here.
So probably in early October. The reason why I'm asking is Bernd and I, we are actually doing a webinar on this as well. If you remember, I'm not sure if you do remember. We do actually. So we do a webinar on this early November, where we actually walk through some of these stories again, but on a webinar basis. So folks that are listening to this, check out our webinar calendar. on the website. We are early November talking about the transformation story of Dynatrace. How do we went from zero to no DevOps or NoOps in a very short amount of time, and so
this will be early October, so people can definitely check that out. Bernd, thank you so much for taking the time to come on our meager little podcast here.
Thanks for having me.
And how long are you in the States for?
This week.
Okay, well, enjoy your time here, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you so much. Andy, any other, besides the webinar, what was the date of that webinar? Did you have a date?
Yeah, the webinar was, I think, November 3rd. I have Bernd online, and then a week later I have Anita online as well. And I also encourage folks, if this airs in October, to check out my presentations at QCon, at CMG, some conferences that are coming up. And so we'll be glad to meet you there. And also check out our local Dynatrace user groups. Go to meetup.com, look for Dynatrace. I've been doing a lot of user group meetings these days. So happy to chat with you and get you excited about how we help you innovate through our innovation. I think that's good.
Yep. And you can check out my musical performance on November 5th in Jersey City. Different kind of performance, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. So thank you, everyone, once again. And the next podcast, we will be taking this concept a little bit further and be talking to Anita from Andy, what's her department? Or
well, she is
our NoOps lead for Dynatrace.
Right. So that'll be how this was all implemented on the ground. So it should be very interesting to hear how conceptual meets reality. And I'm looking forward to that one as well. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, any questions or comments, you can tweet us, #pureperformance@Dynatrace, or you can send an email to pureperformance@dynatrace.com. We always love any feedback or ideas that you have. Thank you so much. Goodbye here from Denver. And you guys want to say your goodbye?
Goodbye from Boston, of Waltham. Boston.
Yeah, it's pretty nice here. So, goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.